Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. Welcome to Clutter Fairy Weekly for April 13th, 2021. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is our weekly webcast and podcast where we talk about all things organizing, and we've been doing it for a decade, which is always shocking to me when I think about it. We are doing that in Zoom, and we do it in Facebook Live as well, and then post everything on YouTube later. So you're participating in our video, and we appreciate it so much. And we love that you come and comment and go on to all the social media channels and participate in our conversation. So thank you so much. We use those comments to decide what we're going to talk about today or any day, and we appreciate that you do it.
If you're joining us in the Zoom meeting for the first time, you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle gets to them before we move on. You can also use the raise hand feature to let me know that you'd like to ask a question or comment yourself via audio or video. We've been seeing more and more of that in use, and that's really great. We really enjoy the participation of our live participants.
Yes, we do.
We're streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can also share your questions and suggestions there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. And during the live webcast every week, you can talk to us by phone by calling 669-900-6833. Use meeting ID 993-419-863 and password clutter to join the meeting. And I think there are probably people who wonder why we give out the phone number and all of that. And the truth is we get a few participants nearly every week who participate by phone because our audience includes some people who are not online. Okay,
so they dial in and listen that way.
So they dial in, yeah. And you can also, participate through that method. The assignment for last week, the weekly title last week was clean up the command post. We're talking about that familiar place in your home where you sit when you're at leisure. And I should probably remove the spotlight from Gayle so you can see my command post, or at least the little bit of it that I want you to see. This is the familiar place in your home where you sit at leisure, the recliner in front of the TV, your favorite spot on the couch, etc. It's often a spot with a circle of stuff surrounding you as you relax in the center. We suggested last week that you deconstruct and freshen up this area. We want to hear from our live audience about how this siddle went for you. And so Gayle, did you take any action on your command post?
Actually, I've been working on the command post of my move client this week. It's 2 spaces that neither the husband or the wife have wanted to pack up until the very last minute. And the moment has now arrived as the movers are coming on Thursday. So I've been going through each station and finding the trash and the stashed old mail and things that need to be in the bathroom, etc. Moving is the perfect time to refresh all that stuff. And that's what we've been doing. Speaking of moving, how has the setup of your new command post been going over there?
Well, as you know, and I think probably most of our audience knows, I work from home and I do most of my work on a laptop. So my command post is this recliner here, and the chair and the laptop are most of what I need to get my work done. But sometimes work demands require me to accessorize. I use that term loosely. So I end up surrounded with things like the good headphones for Zoom meetings and the cheaper but more comfortable ones for other listening tasks, and the magazine from which I wanted to read one article, and invariably bits of paper, mail, receipts, and job paraphernalia that need decisions or action or filing or disposal. So recently I made a commitment to make daily progress, however small, on the backlog of business-related papers that we just moved for the second time in 13 months.
That'll make you pay attention, won't it?
Yeah. So clearing this stuff has shifted to be a higher priority because we moved to a house where dry and climate-controlled storage space is kind of scarce. We have a basement that's spacious and reasonably clean, but a little moist, a little humid. And we have a garage, which will also be very hot and humid in the summer months. As we were hiding the stash of saved paper last week, I picked up a few small bins that will be the starting point for that project. And then as we shuffled things around in the new house, the project bins ended up scattered on the floor all around my work chair. So for my take on the weekly tittle, I picked the one bin that's going to be the first focus of my attention, and I neatly stacked all the rest off to one side, kind of half behind my chair over here. And my goal was to have only the current piece of the project in my direct line of sight, so that I'm reminded of the daily commitment without being completely overwhelmed. We'll see how it goes.
It sounds like a great project to get rid of the old paper, because I know that you, the idea of moving it twice in what in essence is a year seems like a little bit too much. So I know that this is a project that you want to get on. And so it sounds like you're putting it in the command post. You pick the piece you're going to focus on. I'm sure that the audience can't wait to hear how you tackle it. And we will send you good paper vibes while you work on it.
Thank you.
I hope that you report back soon, right?
Connie said, I used your tittle of the week as a KITA. What's a KITA?
Kick in the ass.
Thank you. To get lots of little tidying up tasks done. Bedside table, coffee table, desk entrance, and so on. And that's great.
Those are all like sub command posts, right?
Yeah. And we're trying to craft the tittles in such a way that even if you don't need to do that specific assignment, it inspires something else.
Right.
And then Anya said, I couldn't do the tittle because my spot is just fine and I tidy it almost daily. And that's also a good answer.
Good for you, right? That's like where we're aiming for, right? We're aiming for it looks nice all the time and you feel comfortable with how it looks, and you make that maintenance chore a habit that you do all the time, so that if you tidy it every day, then you're happy with how it looks all the time. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Anya added, my desk is not as great. It's my secondary command center and just about okay.
Well, that's all right. You're doing good. You're ahead of the game, right? You got one command post that looks good all the time. So good on you.
Diane reported, I actually did my tittle Easter weekend. This particular one she did on Easter weekend.
And got some work done. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Lise said, I did clean it up, kitchen table, and it is back to having things on it due to a project, trying to have it done daily. Last night, too tired to do it.
But that's the thing. It's like either you let it pile up and pile up and pile up and pile up because you're doing nothing. So then the job is huge, or you reset it regularly, or you keep it fresh all the time. But if you've done some work and cleared it off and put something back on it and you're going to go back and clear it off again, that's the same process, right? You're still doing the maintenance of doing it in small bits instead of trying to wait until it's a mountain and it's fallen off the end of the kitchen table. And then you have to tackle it because you're about to die under the tsunami of stuff coming your way. So even if you can't clear it every day, if you're clearing it frequently enough that it makes the maintenance project not completely irritating, and you can then use it and continue to use it. Clearly it's a space you're using. So then you can continue to use it as you clean and reset, clean and reset, clean and reset. This is our life, right? Like we live and work in spaces and we're constantly doing stuff in them. And you either have habits about resetting it regularly, or you wait and reset it when it's a big monster. And so we're just trying to push you back on the scale back towards more frequent maintenance version instead of large, overwhelming project clear out instead. So good for you. You're doing good.
And Faith said, my recliner has big covered drawers and a charger station in one of them, so it's pretty well set up. I am trying to keep only a Kleenex box on the small table next to it. And Dawn said, I realized that I have more than one command post. Previously, I bought a couple of decorative containers to house my items so my PTSD husband won't keep bugging me about cleaning it all up. This way we both can be happy.
Compromise. The art of a good marriage, right? That works.
And then Emily Sue said, I have a pile of miscellaneous things on my desk and cleared out about 30% of it. A small accomplishment, but small is still something. I'm glad I can feel good about it, even though it's small progress.
Something is better than nothing. Something always wins over nothing, and everything counts. In the Clutter Fairy world, everything counts. So if you're doing something, then you have won for the day. So good for you. And we applaud you. Yay.
And then Sophia said, I am from the Bronx, home of the Yankees and hip hop. What is a tittle? If you go to cfhou.com/tittle, Tittle, you'll get a longer explanation, but it's basically a small assignment that we give out each week to try and focus our participants' attention, something to try to tackle that's fairly small scale to get you moving.
It's sort of our version of a homework assignment. We give you a little task to see if you can. We challenge you to try to work on the area that we talk about, and then come back and tell us how you did.
Okay, so let's get on to, you wanted to give a report about a virtual appointment that you had this week.
Yes. I had a virtual appointment with a longtime viewer named Connie, who says she's been watching since the video was bad quality. So that means she's been watching for a really long time. And we so appreciate that we have kept some of our audience for almost the whole time that we've been posting on YouTube. It's amazing. Anyway, her mother has just died this past week, and she's got to get out of the apartment in a few weeks. So no time to emotionally fall apart yet. She's in her mother's city instead of her own. Clearly she went at the pandemic as her mother's health was declining. And so then she spent 2020 in the apartment, in her mother's apartment, out of state from her own house. And so she is very overwhelmed with deconstructing her mother's apartment. And since we just talked about that last week, it seemed relevant today to mention it. I think the hardest part about deconstructing a parent's living space when the time comes is being able to see the space as a project instead of a home. It seems disrespectful, but it's needful to change your point of view as you take a home apart. Rearranging furniture, stacking boxes, donating things is all part of the job. And while it's shocking, it has to be done. So I just want to send out our good thoughts as she tackles this process, and ask her to report back to us about how it goes. And remind anybody in this position to walk around and take photos of the space, of the house, anywhere that you want to be able to remember before you start any work. So that way you have a picture of the house as it was before you start deconstructing it. We'll all be in this position at some point, and I know that she is feeling overwhelmed, and I just want to say we're thinking of you, Connie, and we hope that it goes as best as it can while you're trying to get out of there.
Yeah, that's tough.
So
okay,
sorry.
Let us go to our main topic, which we're calling Context and Cues, the Science of Habits and the Struggle with Clutter. So the background for this is, as I've mentioned, we moved about 2.5 weeks ago, and I have noticed that the change of scenery has disrupted my life in both negative and positive ways. On the negative side, we're having to adjust to a smaller living space, which means a lot of decisions to make about what to keep and where to put it. On the positive side, I've noticed that the new space sort of offers a chance to reset, to examine what's been working and what hasn't, and to break or shift old habits and cultivate some fresh ones. So here's my really silly example. We've gone from 2 full bathrooms to 1 full bathroom and a tiny powder room. And so it made sense for me to give up my routine of a morning bath. Now I'm taking a morning shower instead. And I'm finding that it's saving me some valuable morning minutes. And the only real sacrifice is that I used to do most of my daily reading in the bathtub. But the thing about reading is that's a very strong and reliable habit. I've gone like 300 days since the last time that I didn't read 20 or 30 pages of something.
Yeah.
So that habit can survive being shifted to another place and another time of day. But something about that shift in location and perspective also launched a habit that I haven't had in several decades, which is shaving nearly every day.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm in graphic design. It's not white collar. It's not blue collar. It's kind of no collar work. You know, if I'm wearing a shirt with a collar, it's because
You have a
someone
meeting.
died, or
Oh.
not even a meeting, because I just wear a nicer t-shirt for a meeting typically. Someone's getting married or someone died generally if I'm wearing a
Right.
shirt with a
Okay.
collar. Anyway, that means shaving every day has not been a necessity for me, really.
Right.
There's not an
Right.
expectation of that. But I don't know, something about the new space just made me think I should do this, because it's easier to shave every day than to hack away at my completely gray beard once, every week or two, you know? Long story short, these things I noticed about my own habits got me thinking about the process and the psychology of forming and breaking habits. And that's a topic that underlies a lot of decluttering and organizing issues. So today we thought we'd take another look at recent scientific findings about habits, then talk about ways we might apply this understanding to our clutter challenges.
So the ideas we're going to talk about today come from several sources, but are based mostly on the work of Wendy Woods, PhD, and her colleagues at the University of Southern California's Habit Lab, which I think is hilarious. I love that name, the Habit Lab. We'll include links in the show notes for those who'd like to look deeper into this topic and to read the article that we are referencing here. Here's an amazing statistic from the article at the American Psychological Association website. Many of the actions people engage in daily, such as shopping, exercising or not, and communicating with others, are habitual, and thus can be difficult to change. A stunning 43%, like almost half, of everyday actions are enacted habitually while people are thinking about something else. Another key finding of Dr. Wood's research is about the importance of context in habitual behavior. How we behave is hugely affected by the location and the circumstances in which we find ourselves or in which we choose to place ourselves. Dr. Wood says, quote, "We think we do most things because we make decisions or we're asserting willpower. But instead, our research shows that a lot of human behavior is repeated often enough in the same context to form habits. It turns out that changing our thoughts and our attitudes doesn't lead us directly to changes in our behavior as we might expect. Dr. Wood's research showed that when a person repeats a behavior often enough, the behavior becomes habitual, and their intentions, what they're hoping that they'll do, what their intent to make improvements, they really don't matter all that much. So while you read books and listen to us and watch hoarders on TV, it might be changing your attitudes about clutter, but it may not be changing your habits around clutter." So here's an example of a habit that sticks despite all the studying and learning to the contrary. How you handle the mail. Most of us have a habit about when and how we pick up the mail and what we do with it afterwards. We have an intention to sort it, but especially when we're tired or stressed or out of resources in any way, we default without thinking to our habit in our house, which is to come into the hallway and drop it on the counter without thinking. In terms of this discussion, we're triggered by the context of walking in through the front door and the presence of the hall table to drop the mail, despite any intentions we may have thought out or set to do something else. So let's look at an example of a positive habit to cultivate instead. How about creating a habit associated with writing your grocery list? When you're making a grocery list, use that act of writing the grocery list as a trigger to throw out some expired food or wipe a fridge shelf down or throw out something dead in the fridge. Think of it as making space for the new food to arrive when you get back. If part of the habit of grocery list making is also clearing space out, you've made putting groceries away and keeping the fridge clean an easier maintenance task. And you've sort of tacked your habit of doing a little bit of clear out as you prepare the list. You've linked those two things together. Then the context of I'm writing my grocery list and I'm standing near the fridge while I do it. You've made that context a space that will help trigger a new habit. You can do the same thing with your closet. If you're going to go clothes shopping or shoe shopping, part of that process can be making space in the closet first for the new things that are going to come in. Make it a habit to pull some things out for donation before you go shopping for something new. When you have a thought to plan a shopping trip, it's the perfect time to let the context of shopping trigger you to do a little clean out in the closet. You don't have to tackle the whole closet, just a few items to create some space. So Ed, do you have some other ideas around this?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about, I know a lot of people are living portions of their lives, greater portions of their lives outside on their decks, their patios, in their backyards, when weather permitting, when it hasn't turned ice and snow cold
right?
again, even though it's April. And I noticed, so we've probably spent 30% of the last year sitting on my sister and brother-in-law's back deck.
Yeah.
And like any regular living space, it tends to accumulate a certain amount of clutter. But I think we sort of collectively have cultivated the habit that when we're getting ready to say our goodbyes, there's a sort of set of related habits of let's collect and put away leftovers and distribute them if there's a whole lot of something to go around. We had 2 large pizzas for 4 people and about almost a pizza left over. So we divvy it up and each of us takes a box, and then take the paper plates, the plastic cups, the napkins and things back to where they go inside the sliding glass door, and then just sort of reset the patio. If we've moved chairs to make room for more people or anything like that, you shuffle them all back. Yeah.
And so you're saying that you have linked that habit of maintenance clearing to now we're going to say goodbye now.
It's time to go home.
Yeah, it's time to go home. So let's reset everything and be helpful, because then you're not leaving it all for Beth and Rich, right? Like you're not making them all do it by themselves. They've been the lovely hosts, and then you're participating. But it's a maintenance task for basically what has become the alternative living room in the age of COVID. And so you guys are using this room actively, and you want to be able to keep using it, and you're enjoying using it. And so maintaining it and resetting it every time you use it means that you guys can come back and quickly get back into the living room that is the deck and enjoy it and be comfortable.
Yeah. Now, the funny thing is, now that all 4 of us have had both of our vaccinations and a couple of weeks have gone by and we can gather indoors if we want to, it feels a little funny to do that. And that's in the nature of habits. We turned it into a habit. Jane shared in Atomic Habits, the author, and I think she said the author is James Clear.
Okay.
Talks about actions rather than time being the major factor in changing a habit. Setting a goal and thinking about it for 21 days doesn't change anything. Taking action on the goal, creating new habits, is what causes change. She says the 21-day number has been out there for a long time, but we really need to just take action to make change a habit. And that was one of the things that I ran across in my reading this week, was that figure of 21 days came from some research. I can't remember the name, but it was an idea put forward in the 60s, and it hasn't really held up to careful examination. It depends very much on the magnitude of the action in your life, how big a thing you're taking on. So cultivating the habit of dealing with everyday's mail may only take you a week, because it's a tiny thing. And if you start tackling it every day, you may get it locked in a week or 2 or 3. But some bigger habits, like if you want to exercise every day, it may take you a few months or longer to get into that.
A habit.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the importance of the article that we referenced today about Wendy Wood's work is the idea that intention is not the driver necessarily of behavioral change or habit change, that you may have the intention, and you may have had the intention for a decade to exercise, but if you're still not exercising, clearly that intention is not enough. And so it also explains to me on the flip side why people do better, for instance, exercising, if they go out to do it somewhere, like they go to the gym, and the gym becomes the context in which if you can get yourself to the gym, then you're there with the machines and the people who are exercising, and you exercise. Or if you can get yourself out to meet one of your friends and go walking around the neighborhood, the act of going out of the house and walking around is how you get the habit of exercising, and from intention to action, because you put yourself in the context to be exercising. Like we used to go walk around Herman Park. We made the appointment and would show up. And the fact that both of us were there at the park meant that we went and walked around the park. And so having the thought and having the habit of doing it are not the same thing. And trying to change your intention is not enough, is what I'm saying. You want the intention, but then you also, like Ed said, you have to have the actions that trigger doing it differently, doing something towards your intention. And it's also why we say in the Clutter Fairy world, everything counts. If you're doing something, you're doing better than nothing. And having an intentional thought and doing nothing gets you nowhere down the path, really. But doing something, anything, however small, is the beginning of changing your behavior and creating habits that work for you. And as some of the people have said, they have habits now, like Anya was saying, she has a habit of resetting her command post every week. Well, that's a habit that she's developed now. And in the context of, I sit in the command post and it's the end of the day, this is something that I do in my own command post as well. When I get up to go to bed, then I have to pause and pick up all the things. There's my shoes that need to go back to the bedroom. There's my socks that need to go into the laundry. There's my phone that I got to take. Here's my glass, the drink that I've been drinking. Here's the, the leftover, the mail that I generated, the bill that I paid, the whatever, I end up sometimes picking up, here's papers I need to go put in my filing system. There's always things to pick up and carry away. And sometimes I'm like, I have so much in my hands, I can barely manage it all. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm one of those people that's like, I want all the grocery bags to come in one trip. I don't want to make more than one trip. And so it's sort of a game for me to, no matter how much stuff needs to leave the command post, I pick it all up and take it with me. And that's my habit, that in that context of that command post, when it's time to go to bed, I stand up and take everything with me on the way out, so that I've cleared the space.
Have you ever watched any of the cooking shows with Rachel Ray?
Some time ago, yeah.
She does this kooky thing where she goes to the cupboards to get the ingredients, and it seems like she has set the goal for herself of carrying absolutely everything she needs to make a recipe from the cabinets to the counter in one fell swoop. That's what I'm reminded of. Rowan said, I have recently developed the habit of every time I leave the room, I look for things that need to go to another room.
Ooh, good one.
It only takes 5 seconds to scan for things. But that's a terrific example. Yeah.
And if there's only one thing to pick up, then, you can pick up. And that's my no wasted trip that I say to people a lot. If you're going up and down the stairs, you should be picking up something and need to go upstairs and take it with you. If you're going down the stairs, you need to be taking something with you. And that's the Rowan's example, is the moving from room to room version of that habit, right? If you're going to make a trip anyway, you might as well have something in your hand that needs to go with you.
Well, and my mother would stack clean laundry on the stairs at our house in Houston, where my older brother and my older sister and I all had rooms upstairs. She would put our laundry on the stairs because she didn't want to have to make 1,000 trips up and down those stairs.
Right.
And she knew we were going anyway. And so she was trying to cultivate the habit in us. It's hard to cultivate a habit in someone else. But Connie said, the best way to create a new habit is to hook it onto a habit already established. Tiny habits. Dr. BJ Fogg, who is at another California university, I forget which one, who has studied habit formation, talks about if there's a little thing you want to do, connect it to another thing you're already doing successfully that has some sort of logical association. And so that's why we say grocery list
triggers cleaning the fridge,
clean
right?
refrigerator. Yeah. Or grocery list could also trigger putting away the stuff that's still out on the counters from the last shopping trip.
Right.
That's a really good one if you have a little backlog to deal with. It's Anita true. Says lunchtime is mail time for me. That and doing the newspaper puzzle and reading the paper. Then all of it goes to the paper recycling bin, which I moved into the kitchen. Some of it lands in my office, and then decisions and actions have to follow. Big pile on desk right now.
But it's still filtered, right? Like, because if you're sitting with the lunch and reading through the mail, then you're recycling some, you're trashing some, and you're making some of it go away. So you're still doing stage one at least. And so then the next habit to develop is, when do you sit down with the stuff on the desk and manage that? What's your time frame or trigger for that? Processing round 2 of the mail.
Talking about the relationship between intention and action and successful habit creation. Well, I thought of the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right.
And times when Jaime and I have disagreed about things, and I said, well, but what I wanted was A, B, and C. What I wished for was D, E, and F. And he would, come back at me with, yeah, but what you did was this other thing, and so, in what we're trying to accomplish in our spaces, our intentions are much less important than what we actually do.
Yeah.
And I always thought having workout equipment at home would be useful. And then I just sort of thought, boy, if I had that fill in the blank machine here, I would exercise every day. And a lot of people buy exercise equipment
under that theory,
under that mistaken, for most of us, understanding that if it's here, I will use it. But then that exercise machine is surrounded by other things that demand your attention. And
also surrounded by all of the places, like, you come home to relax. You don't come home to work hard. So the home is mostly the place where you come to chillax and recuperate from your day and refresh your mind and body. And it's a place where you don't typically think, this is where I need to get a whole bunch of work done. You typically think, oh, thank God I can take my bra off. Like, this is when you kick back. And so having the exercise machine in there, which is basically a call to a bunch of action and movement in a space where you are triggered to relax and let your hair down, seems contraindicated. Like, they don't go together. And a lot of people have died on that hoisted petard because they can't do it without company or in the presence of other people exercising, like going to the gym or meeting somebody out or walking around outside. They can't do it in the same place where the bed is and the couch is and the
TV is,
and the TV and the cake in the kitchen. Like, you can't, those things are not, helpful in habit forming around exercise. And
I think the ones who do it successfully, people who do it successfully, are the ones who have connected it to something else, who have created the right context for themselves. So they put their exercise bike in front of the TV where they binge watch Game of Thrones.
There you go.
You put it in front, you connect it to this other habit you have, and say, whenever I watch an episode of fill in the blank, I will also cycle for
20
a mile or whatever. Yeah.
Well, and people do they make it part of their morning routine. Like, you're getting ready to get up and get dressed and shower and get out of the house and go to work. And you have sort of a ramp up routine that gets you on your way out the door. And so they make it part of their ramp, but like get out of bed, they get on the machine, they do their things on the machine, they take their shower and they go to work, and it's all part of their morning get ready and get rolling routine. Or they do it like, I had a doctor one time say to me that after a long, stressful day in the office, seeing clients, seeing patients all day long, she would come home, and the first thing that she would do when she would come home is get on the treadmill and spend 30 minutes not talking to her family, not doing anything else, but basically walking as a refreshing and distraction from a long and stressful day. And it was like mind relaxing for her because it was physical instead of mental. And it was a way for her to decompress when she came home. And that meant that she made it part of her coming home habit. So she would come into the house, and before she'd do anything else, she would go straight and get on the machine and do her, wind down of exercise. And then that made it part of her habit of coming home, despite the fact that the rest of the time she would sit down, make dinner, watch TV, whatever, but she did all that afterwards. And so it was a way for her to hook the habit to coming home from the end of the day. So you can work it in wherever it works. But it's fascinating to me that almost half of everybody finds attaching, they have the intent, you have a desire, like Ed said, you wish that you would do XYZ, but if you stay in the same motion and you walk through the same places without taking a different action, then that intention never quite gets you rolling forward. It never gets you going there. And it explains a lot, explains a lot about why people read and study and work and look and talk to us and follow podcasts and all the things that you do to try to gather data about getting organized and decluttering. And yet they still feel like they haven't made any changes. And so it's that last link of changing the habit of being in the house and doing nothing into being in the house and doing something, which makes a difference for people. And it's a hard one.
In contradiction, Wolf on Facebook said, I think having the exercise equipment in the house can help because it reduces friction, so to speak. It can help reduce the barrier to entry.
Mm-hmm.
And
good point.
If getting ready and leaving the house to exercise or being embarrassed exercising around people is an issue, then that makes getting out to exercise harder. Then do it. Yeah. And so I think I probably shared with you years and years ago that I, at some point, got it in my head, maybe from a TED talk that I had listened to, that I enjoyed walking as a form of exercise because it was when I did my hunting and gathering of ideas.
Yeah. It was a very thoughtful space for you to be walking and thinking at the same time.
And I sort of had the idea that maybe we evolved to do a lot of walking because our ancestors 250,000 years ago would spend the whole day walking, looking for things to eat and, trying to find things to gather from the environment or kill from the environment,
as it were.
Eat. And so maybe there's something, natural for us to go out and walk. Tammy said, my habit is to drive to the trail to walk in nature daily.
And that's definitely one that's context driven, right? Like when you get to the trail, then the habit is now I'm in this context of this trail and it's time to walk.
Yeah.
That's great.
And one of the things that's nice about being a new house is a new neighborhood to explore. And so I'm enjoying that.
New
daily
place to
walks.
walk with the dog.
Yes.
Little Hardy gets to go in and walk in a new neighborhood. That's exciting.
Well, it's also nice that we're not on a dead end road exactly, but we're in a little sub neighborhood that has we're on a little street off the main road, and off our street there are two little roads that one ends in a dead end and one ends in a loop.
Yeah.
And so there's no through traffic, so we don't have to fight a lot of cars. Connie said, I started a habit of only talking on the phone standing up. And
That's
so,
interesting.
Connie, if you want to pipe in is that about shortening your phone calls, or is that about basically staying in
Not,
motion while you're talking on the phone?
yeah,
If you
not
want
being on the
to,
couch.
if you want to pipe in and tell us why you're doing that, if you
what
care
you're
to
aiming
share.
for.
I also watched a TED Talk that said that we do too much sitting, and I thought, okay, I will simply just every time the phone call comes in, no matter where I am, I'll just stand up and I'll use that time for walking around, standing up while talking. That's the only thing.
That's a great idea. And how perfect to like link it to, whatever, you're going to get phone calls, right? So eventually you're going to have to stand up while you talk, right? That's great. Good job.
Thank you.
That's a
And
good hook.
Emily Sue said, actively doing something to change my habits makes the change real. It feels unfamiliar, but I'm so hungry for a real change. And I think I've shared before that a coach I have worked with, Madison Gray, used to say, action creates clarity. And, I think it's a good thing to remember that doing something, even if it's not the exact right, perfect thing, the thing that most needs to get done, it will stir things for you,
Mm-hmm.
and
it shakes things loose and stirs the pot and untethers things that have been locked in place.
Yeah. And it can end your stuckness.
Yes.
To do something, anything at all. And, fresh example is yesterday, Jaime had been, trying to figure out where the heck to put everything in our smaller house with less useful storage. And he was sort of stuck in the late afternoon. And so we talked about it a little bit. And then I said, what is something you need my help with that we could do right now that's going to take 5 minutes? And he said, I need you to arrange the electronics. We packed up the router, uninterruptible power supply, file server, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Vonage box. I packed up all that stuff in cables before the move, and we brought it here. And then I hooked up the things that were essential, and we just set them on the floor because we didn't know where we were going to put them,
where they're going to go.
And then over the weekend, we got a new piece of furniture, a new used piece of furniture, $20 that somebody was ready to part with on Facebook, I think. And we put it in place, but hadn't organized everything, where it needs to go. So I did that, pulled it out from the wall, shut down the server, disconnected what I needed to disconnect, rearranged it into the piece of furniture where it's hidden from view.
And now going to live.
And somewhat protected from dust, and set it all back up. And it took 5 minutes, but it solved a problem and got us going. And so then it was more clear to him what to do next,
And it's sort of like, kicking the rocks that are in the river out of the way. Sometimes something's blocking the flow, and any kind of movement towards being in action helps clear rocks out of the river and improves the flow. And that's really what we're aiming for at this point. All of your habit changes and everything that you do is all geared towards maintaining your space and making it a place where you're happy and comfortable living. And so that's what we're talking about, habits today, and the idea of your intention may not be enough. You still have to go out and do some action. And so in the spirit of that, I think we can probably jump to the tittle at this point, because it is called Turn Over a New Leaf, or Take a Fresh Look at an Old One. And this is our main topic today was about habits. And so our assignment for this week is to identify a new habit that you'd like to cultivate, or to examine an old habit that you'd like to modify or eliminate. It doesn't have to be big, but we were talking about the grocery shopping and clearing out, making a grocery list and using that to wipe down a fridge shelf or to throw out some old expired food, or you're going to go clothes shopping. And so go into the closet and find some things that are ready for donation.
Yeah. And I think if what you want to do is reform or do away with a habit that isn't working for you, then jot down the thing you'd like to change and then make some observations about it. Like, where do you do it? When do you do it? What do you do in association with it?
And what about that have you been doing over and over, exactly that pathway, that motion with your body, with your hands, how have you been doing something over and over and over and over again in exactly that string of physical movement that you've been doing for the last decade? How can that string be altered, tweaked, poked, changed to come up with a different outcome?
Yeah, and we want to encourage you to examine the context, because that context is important. Examine what's triggering it for you and see if you can shift it a little bit.
And if you think about it, that in the same way that your house is stuck, where there's piles of things that have been there for a long time, and there's places where the furniture has been for a long time, and here's all the boxes that have never been opened for the last 5 years, and those things that have been part of the landscape, we're asking you to look at the motions and habits and patterns of movement that are also stuck in place, like the objects in the house are. Examine the things that you do, examine consciously the things that you do unconsciously without thinking about them, and decide, is this process that I've been doing for the last decade, because of the way that the house is set up, because of the way that I've been thinking about this, I've been doing it this way without thinking for forever. Is that really working for me? Or is this something I need to modify? And see if you can find a way to tweak a habit or introduce a new one, and see how it feels, see what it changes, see if it makes some movement happen in the house. That's what we're aiming for ultimately, is for you to get in motion and satisfied with your surroundings. And so anything that you can change that is an old habit that may now be dead or useless or not supporting you in getting somewhere, let's see if you can look at it and tweak it and change it.
Okay, before we go, I want to remind our viewers and listeners that our YouTube channel has more than 150 videos on lots and lots of organizing topics. Go to cfhou.com/YouTube. And while you're there, subscribe and click the bell icon next to the subscribe button if you'd like to get notifications when we post new content. We also want to say a special thank you to FluffCat65. I do not know the real identity of FluffCat65.
Love that name. Love it.
I think that is a regular Zoom participant.
Yeah,
so if you want to, if you would like us to publicly acknowledge you, please remind me who that is. But I want to thank FluffCat for becoming our newest Patreon supporter.
Thank you so much.
If you would like to help support our efforts with a recurring monthly donation, any amount will make us happy. Please visit cfhou.com/Patreon, Patreon. Your contributions help us offset the costs associated with producing the weekly webcast and will help us fund new projects that we have in the works. Thank you for your generosity, FluffCat.
Somebody asked you to repeat the YouTube channel again. So here it is. Here's the sign. cfhou.com/YouTube is designed to direct you straight to my channel.
I also want to announce for those who are watching this on YouTube, stick around after we end our Facebook stream and our YouTube recording and talk to everybody who's still in the Zoom meeting in a more casual and sometimes profane and if anyone
irreverent,
and if anyone wants to stick around but not be part of the recorded portion of the meeting, you are welcome to do so. And so I hope that will encourage some people to participate live who haven't in the past. We will be back Next week, Tuesday, April 20th at noon US Central Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, you can join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from our audience, so please send us your questions, comments, and topic suggestions on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. And you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Marcy says, did you get mail from me? Yes, I did. Thank you very much. She did not want to go through Patreon, so she just mailed me a little donation, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you for sending it on. I just got it 2 days ago. So thank you. Mwah. Appreciate it. We will be back next week as always. And you can call me or have a virtual appointment or make comments somewhere and ask for support. We're always here for you. So reach out and keep in contact with us, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.